So Tim Owens, Cronin Communications, you talked a little bit about cell phone and the new generation and creating new revenue. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you talked about this morning?
Well, we're dealing with the next generation of customers that is reliant on their cell phone for communications and then on the internet for all of their electronic communications and online communications, and getting further and further away from landline use.
Sure.
And so we've conducted several studies looking at their telecom usages and trends and how to break through to them and acquire their market share. And what we're finding is that dependency on landline is pretty much eliminated altogether. Less than half of individuals aged 14 to 27 actually even use their landline phone. Even if it's in the house, they just don't use it. So all of that is shifting, without surprise, to wireless communications and online communications. And among those two items, the technology they're most dependent on is the online communications, even more so than wireless. So our session looked at the cell phone generation, but really it's also the online generation. And so we're trying to figure out ways for marketers of phone companies to communicate with them through those technologies, which is very difficult because there aren't published phone numbers, there's not as much access, there's more privacy, more anonymity. So we surveyed this demographic to figure out ways to actually get through to them and break through to them and get their attention with products and services that the local phone companies might have to offer.
So yeah, a couple years ago, I think I wrote an article called The Packet Generation. Is that what this is about, kind of people, shorter soundbite type of things?
Very, very much so, very much so. Totally less audio communications. I mean, even with cell phone usage, they prefer to use text messaging to actually making the phone call. So it's not even really about cell phones, it's really more about the mobility of the cell phone that allows them to send text messages. And when you ask them why they prefer that, there are numerous reasons. It's fun, it's a trend, it's quick, it's easy, it's interesting, you can do it from anywhere. But what they normally tell us is that there's a greater degree of privacy with these text messages and electronic communications than they get from audio phone calls. And so this is a more private kind of generation, a more discreet generation. Yeah, and
because it's kind of contradictory to the whole MySpace type of thing where you can see someone's profile. So it's kind of an interesting
maybe private meaning I don't necessarily care who sees it, but in a setting like this, you know, it's more private for me to text and actually talk.
Okay.
So, and then private for my parents. So with amongst themselves, it's not at all private because these things get forwarded and they're out on the internet. But in terms of individual communications, I can do it discreetly and privately without my parents seeing, without other people seeing around me.
And they've created a whole new language.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was saying in my session that when I first started noticing text messaging, I was at a restaurant looking across the room, and all these children at their tables were kind of looking down at their laps, and I thought it was just so nice that everyone in the restaurant, all these kids were praying before dinner, and that wasn't at all the case. They were actually doing their texting under the table.
Praying to the temple and the cell phone. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Well, Tim, thank you very much for enlightening us on the packet generation.
Great, thank you.